codes that begin with 44 and 45. Educational services that begin with 61, automatically excluded. Religious organizations, public administration, food and drinking places, which begins with 722. All those are prohibited. So the universe of what you can include would be all other two-digit codes if you wanted to. Most communities, as you look at that big spreadsheet there, just take it to the two-digit level. They either include, for example, all information technology companies that begin with 51, or they exclude it. What this committee did in the last work was take it down to the 6-digit level. You may not want to include all companies that fall within that 51 NAICS code, and that's where you go to your master list and look what's included in 51. And so there, things like music publishers, newspaper publishers, all the way down to all other services. Your committee included all of those. You said they would all be eligible type companies for this. Where you drill down more though than any others is in the professional, scientific, and technical services 54. If you look at your master list of all codes that begin with 54, you've already excluded some in your previous, in the previous work that you did. For example,
it looks like law offices are not included.
Of course not.
Ernie, though, why don't you explain that about it has to be so much outside of the state, or because that would help maybe, hopefully.
Yeah. Some of these you'll see are real small, like offices of lawyers, offices of notaries, title and abstract, settlement offices. The thing you need to keep in mind on this when you decide or see if it's eligible, 51% of their revenues each year have to come from outside the state of Missouri. So if it's a lawyer that's serving Columbia in Missouri, or a title company or a notary, if it's just here serving a local company or a community, they wouldn't be eligible for the program. It would have to be at least 51% coming from outside, new revenue, not just into the area, but into the state of Missouri. And so that requirement alone is going to eliminate many companies from ever qualifying or using this program.
And that's for service.
That's for anything that's service. So manufacturing is different. If they're manufacturing for a wholesale trade, transportation, warehousing, they would just qualify by their code. Their code, they don't have to meet that. But all service beginning, I think, with 51 will all have to meet that 51%.
Right. And, I know in the last committee we had a lot of discussion around this, and one of the questions you might all ask is, well, why would you disqualify anyone? And I think some of the discussion in the last, and I know Randy, for example, Randy represents the hospice, said, well, cigarette manufacturers you could support. So things like that were some of the discussions we got into in the last week. Personally, in my opinion, I don't know why you would exclude anyone. Other than specific areas of concern that the community might have with why you would have a business, you'd want to attract a certain type of business here. So that's some of the discussion we need to have as a community.
A question, Mr. Andrews. Does the 51% outside Missouri, is that only affects manufacturers?
No, service.
Services. Everything else, it doesn't matter?
Yeah, basically, if you look at your list, your manufacturing, wholesale trade, transportation, and warehousing would not need to meet the 51% because manufacturing is an eligible activity under the program. But typically, your service codes begin around 51 and go throughout all those others up to the end.
So 51 to the end are all service.
Right.
Well, there's more than just 51 codes, though.
No, I mean, to the end of the list, yeah.
51.
51, like information, finance, insurance. And insurance would be considered service, real estate, and rental and leasing, professional, scientific, technical. All those codes above, greater than 5.1 would be considered your service businesses. And would need to have your 51%.
They would be the only ones impacted by this 51% or greater.
Right.
Because that, you know, as I look at like the 44 codes here, they would not be included, just 51.
Or which ones?
Well, I'm just looking at some of these are obviously service, there's other.
Those are
44 is
retail.
44 is retail and it's automatically excluded.
Automatically.
All 45 is excluded already.
I'm sorry, Dennis. So it's a pretty daunting process that we're going to go through. Obviously, we're going to go through each and every one of these 6-digit codes. So, might be here for a year. We need to talk about process, how we're going to go through this.
I think that what was helpful, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What was helpful, I think, last time, each of us took them home, looked at them, tried to identify ones that we wanted to bring up, like cigarette manufacturing. So, John's right, there's two thoughts. Why would you eliminate anything? And then some issues, so we brought it up, discussed it, and then decided, yes, we'd leave or we wouldn't. And I think that helped move the process, because it was a large list, and some may never happen in Boone County, Columbia, but some may, and 10 years from now, who knows? So there's two ways of looking at it. But I do think, I think it is a good exercise to sit down, look at it, and see, does this make sense for our community?
Very good point.
You have a copy of the next code that we previously approved? Do we have that?
Yeah, it's
First.
the one that says italicized, updated as of 3/16. Should be the first sheet under the.
I don't know.
Exactly what I'm thinking.
Now, do we have that majority of the older members?
Is it the ones in yellow in the new book?
It's this sheet here that,
It should be the
if you, I'll even,
Size of 16, 12.
yeah, you've got it there, so I'll,
Okay. So it's everything that's on this page.
so as the advisory board proposed, and it was dated 3/16/12. I will make sure I'll get that by email today if you don't have it.
So,
I would just second what Randy said. It makes sense to me to kind of go through these and they're, one approach is to just say, let's do a blanket and put out the welcome mat to everyone who is eligible. But to me, the downside of that is there might be particular types of industry or manufacturers or even service professionals that we may not want to encourage to come to our community. Like tobacco manufacturers is one, although, in general, tobacco manufacturing is it's not likely to come here, but it's not necessarily an ugly process either.
Right.
There are a lot uglier in terms of external effects, types of industry that we could.
And we had those discussions. I think this new committee needs to have those same discussions.
I agree.
I move we adopt the existing list of NAICS codes and offer amendments the next meeting. So, let me say that.
We can second. All in favor?
Right, go ahead, discussion on that.
I'm sorry.
I think it's a little premature. I'm not prepared to accept or adopt the work of the previous committee in our first meeting. I think that sends a wrong message to our broader public if we just do that without participation, particularly since there's a third new member who's not here today. I think it would be better for us to not do that today in our first meeting, and instead for each member of the committee to take some time to revisit or visit for the first time with the NAICS codes that the previous board looked at, as well as the broader list. That's what my preference would be that we do as a board.
This is my thoughts on that. This work has already been done. What I want us to do is, okay, this is where they were at. Let's move forward from here and do exactly what you're saying, but next meeting offer amendments so that we're not reinventing this wheel. Let's take what they got, okay? You're gonna have time to review it, attack it, pursue it to the next meeting. Let's say, for instance, say I'm a strong supporter of tobacco products. Well, my amendment's gonna be, hey, I wanna strike off exemptions for tobacco industries. That would be my amendment. Then we fight about that addition or deletion. I also feel the exact same way. I'm gonna go through these SIC codes and I'm gonna base my decisions on where manufacturing is going in America. I am not in a position to make those decisions today. But what I want to do is, as I go through those codes, the next meeting, I'm going to offer my amendments to this existing list. Maybe the ones that I'm thinking about are already in here. But what I'm trying to do is get us to the point where we have time to review what's already happened. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to move on to the juicier issues at hand. I don't want to be bogged down in reinventing the wheel in all this, because we have bigger issues we need to address. So let's look at what's done, just give it a review. Next meeting, let's amend this list based on our thoughts as new members of the board, and then go from there. And we fight the amendments versus reinventing a whole new list, which is going to take another 2 meetings, I think.
I don't think it's appropriate for us to adopt wholesale the previous list today, for the reasons that I stated. I think we haven't lost the work that's been done. I don't see the cost of waiting to the next meeting. We have highlighted the list of codes that were previously approved by the board. We can see them. We can evaluate them. I just think from a process standpoint, we'd be moving too fast to adopt the previous list and then amend it, particularly since we have a member who has never been to a board meeting. So
I think Anthony is just trying to get us to a starting point. But I mean, again, this is a new board, and we, so what do anyone else have a feeling?
Yeah, well, I know the work that went into creating this list. I know we worked hard, but there is a board member who isn't here. It makes sense.
There's a motion on the floor, so let's go ahead and vote on the yeah or nay.
Further discussion?
I can see the benefits of going both ways and don't want to straddle the fence on this. So I'll put us a vote when we vote. But I understand what Jeremy has said, and also understand that if we decide to approve this, we do have a mechanism in place so that all voices will be heard, and we'll still have an opportunity to take a look at this list and scrutinize it and make any changes and recommendations that we need to make. So, and I think everybody will have an opportunity to have their input. So we are taking away anybody's opportunity to have an input on and say so on this list. It would also like to know if there's an updated NEICS list. This is 2007.
That's the most current.
Is that the most current? Okay. If there was, I recommend that we do that. But I don't think we're taking away from anybody's opportunity to make any changes and updates from the new board's perspective.
And I think, my opinion would be, I think we can come back next meeting with the input of concerns or business concerns that we want to add and delete from what the previous board did and move through it quickly. I don't think we have to make that decision today to vote on adopting what we previously had. So I would agree with Jeremy. I think just from the board perspective, perception issue and not having a board member here, that's the way. That's fine. So,
But Bernie, the new members, do they have the complete list or the list that the other board approved?
They have all three things that you have. They have the.
So you have all the,
Your
okay,
summarized
good, because I want to make sure you had.
There's a
Okay.
spreadsheet
Yep.
and then the
Okay.
total.
we got to do that.
Okay, yeah, we need, okay. That was the main thing, so you knew what we had,
Yeah.
so you have the opportunity to look at total, okay, good.
So any other discussion? So we have a motion that's been seconded. We need to vote on that motion. Do you want to repeat your motion?
I move we adopt the existing, list of NAICS codes adopted by the previous board.
All in favor? Opposed? So we won't do that right now. Okay, we have about 5 minutes. Just quickly, I think we should go through the tax abatement level issue. Do you want to just give a general overview of what we have to decide as a committee in the tax abatement?
Yeah, what you have to decide is the minimum required by the state is 50% for 10 years. Your previous board had had some discussion on whether or not to have, for example, a higher level for LEED certification or any other, basically any other type of requirement that you wanted to put on there. But I think the recommendation is tending to go towards just a 50% for 10 years, the minimum required by the state. Now, Randy presented some information on LEED, for example, and there was talk that if, for example, if a building was LEED certified silver, could get an additional 15% or 25% for gold. But that committee did not vote. They were just looking at ways to that you could tier something if you want to put extra requirements. There was also discussion, I mean, for example, new jobs created, there's going to be transportation issues. Do you want to build in some kind of additional abatement level for transportation or some other issue that, as I understand your discussions last time, it's difficult to actually administer something like that. How do you actually give someone an additional abatement for and monitor those types of activities? Is that?
Yeah, that's very accurate. The other thing I would add to that would be, there's obviously sensitivity around